Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 17 transfer plans where I'll take an early look at how my team is currently set up, the players that I'm looking to bring in, and how I'm looking moving forward in FPL as well. If you enjoyed today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, I'm recording this late on Sunday, ready for a Monday morning upload. And I hope you have a wonderful Monday and a wonderful week ahead. But let's firstly review Game Week 16, which of course hasn't yet ended because once again we have Monday Night Football. And once again, Bournemouth and West Ham are playing on Monday. It feels like those two teams in particular always seem to be playing on a Monday. And because I don't own assets from those two teams, it feels like, apart from Fabianski on my bench, of course, it feels like I very rarely actually have assets playing on a Monday. But here we are. And once again, it's looking like it could be a green arrow. Although, given that it's an incredibly small green arrow, I would imagine that that arrow is going to turn red on Monday evening. But as of right now, dependent upon bonus points, which have been changing quite a lot, I'm currently on 53 points. So 53 points all out, which is getting me closer to that 1,000 point mark. I would love to know, what is your rank, but also what is your total points? I've seen quite a few people cross that 1,000 point threshold this week, which is obviously absolutely amazing going into Game Week 17. In terms of how the week went, obviously the fact that I haven't got a massive red arrow, that's great, right? We don't want to lose rank too much, but I think generally it was a very disappointing week. I'm not sure I've ever seen a series of teams look as good as they did going into Game Week 16. Not just mine, but the fact that all of the popular assets like Isak against Leicester, we had CUNHA against Ipswich, who, by the way, both did very well, but then we had all of the premiums with really good home fixtures as well. All 11 of my players were playing at home. I had double Liverpool, double Arsenal, and triple Chelsea, who are arguably the three best teams in the league at the moment. And so, yeah, it didn't go terribly, but I think I was expecting sort of like 80 to 100 points. But FPL never pans out that way, of course. But let's just go through each of the players and discuss how they did in general. And actually, let's start with Chelsea. So I obviously have three Chelsea players, not including Nicholas Jackson, who, of course, outscored all of my Chelsea players. Sanchez is incredibly frustrating, and it's not because he concedes, because a lot of teams don't keep clean sheets. I'm not expecting clean sheets every week. It's either the manner in which they concede or when they concede. Chelsea, seemingly, and if you're a Chelsea fan, you'll know this, they concede so late on in so many games. And once again, I was sat there thinking, I've got a clean sheet with Sanchez. He was on a 9-pointer. 9 points would have been so wonderful because he was on 2 bonus points. He'd obviously made the 3 saves as well. Not only did Sanchez concede, which first he lost me 6 points, Mbeumo, who I transferred out, scored and is now on 3 bonus points. That's a 10-pointer. And because Sanchez conceded and Chelsea lost their clean sheet, it pushed Nicholas Jackson onto 2 bonus points. That one goal, Mbeumo scoring, wiping out Jackson and wiping out Sanchez's clean sheet and giving Jackson the bonus points. It honestly cost me like 80k. I was top 300k at that point. So that was a massive swing. But you can't have everything in FPL. It does sum up what it's been like owning Robert Sanchez, but 3 points isn't too bad. The defense was a bit of a mixed bag, and in fact, it was a very mixed bag. Gabriel being back was wonderful. If Gabriel hadn't featured, I would have had Vandenberg off the bench, but based on what we heard on the deadline stream, it sounded very likely that he would, and he actually picked up 3 bonus points. Gabriel very rarely picks up bonus points unless he gets an attacking return. So that was wonderful. We had a really strong game. Arsenal defence are just unbelievable. I would ideally like to add a second Arsenal defender at some point. It's just about whether I want to lock up that much money in the defence with a lot of the attackers performing well and also the new assistant manager chip in which I need to free up some funds. It's like, how much money do you want to lock into a defence when you've already got 2 premiums? And that's because this week I did bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold. And we'll discuss the transfer I made to free that up. But yeah, Trent came in. Lots of people are already saying they regret this move. It's a lot of money tied up. Like, Trent's not going to score every single week, right? He's not going to keep a clean sheet every week. We knew that the first 2 games of bringing him in against Fulham and Spurs, they're not particularly easy games. And you could have said, why didn't you wait? I just wanted to get into this structure nice and early. And I knew if Trent did anything, he'd continue to rise in price. And I just wanted to get locked in to this sort of structure as soon as I could. So yeah, I would have liked something from Trent, but at the end of the day, we're not going to get something from every single player. So Trent 1-pointer, not fantastic. The real kicker was 8 Nuri getting -2, especially when other cheap assets like Lewis Hall got 15 points. 8 Nuri Wolves, they're just an absolute mess. I mean, how disappointing. CUNHA obviously did very well here, but just in general, they are just all over the place. We'll obviously discuss throughout this video the possibility of a retrospective ban for CUNHA as well. Obviously, 8 Nuri's now missing for Game Week 17. There's a strong chance that going into Game Week 17, I'm without both of my Wolves assets and I actually sell them both because, yeah, just super disappointing. But 8 Nuri is gone moving forward, as we'll discuss. That -2 is just, if you didn't see, by the way, he got booked during the game, which obviously was painful enough. He was on a 0-pointer, which we knew then, obviously, he would be suspended for 17 regardless. And then after the full-time whistle, he decided to try and fight everyone and got a second yellow card. So what does this mean? It means 8 Nuri is suspended for 17, but it also means he's still on 4 yellow cards as well, which is just awful. So yeah, 8 Nuri's got to go, but -2 is almost comical at this stage. The midfield was largely quite disappointing. Like, the 3 premiums between them scored 10 points. Salah got 5, Palmer blanked, Saka blanked and got the clean sheet point. Like 10 points between them. I didn't see that coming. All 3 of them had home games. And yes, Salah was playing against Fulham and Saka was playing against Everton, who aren't terrible defences, but you expect more from your 3 expensive assets. I captained the right one of the 3. Like, I could have obviously captained Isak, and I wish I had, but out of Salah, Palmer and Saka, it's only an extra few points, but I'm glad I captained Mohamed Salah. He just delivers week upon week. And in all honesty, considering Liverpool had 10 men for most of that game, Mohamed Salah still had his chances to return. Obviously, as did Saka and Palmer too, but Mohamed Salah is just elite. And if you saw the cross for his assist, it wasn't one of those lucky assists where the ball deflects to a player. It was a pinpoint cross. It was absolutely wonderful. So yeah, Salah delivered, Palmer and Saka both blanking. And my other transfer in this week to fund Trent was to bring in Enzo, who did get me an assist. And I've actually spoken to a couple of Chelsea fans because I wasn't able to watch the Chelsea game because it wasn't on TV in the UK. But apparently, Enzo had an absolutely cracking game, could have had another assist, was taking a few shots around the edge of the box. Apparently, he just generally looked very good. Obviously, he's on set pieces as well, which is fantastic. So a lot of in-swinging corners. I just think Enzo's a great pickup at his price. Like, he's the captain at the moment in the absence of James. The fixtures coming up is so great. And for him to get an assist immediately was wonderful. Of course, I say that, but the player that I sold was Brian Mbeumo, who got 10 points, right? So I am 4 points down already on this. Potentially even more, right? Yeah, I am, because I would have played someone else instead, like Leif Davis. So it's not ideal. There are definitely, obviously, you don't want to lose points the week you transfer in a player. But in the long term, I just don't think he's still not taking many shots right, Brian Mbeumo, and I wanted a Liverpool defender. So I'm pretty happy. At least Enzo returned. And you're not going to nail your transfers in the first week of you making them every single time. Like, sometimes they'll backfire slightly. So yeah, Enzo's done very well. And then the front 3, again, a bit of a mixed bag. João Pedro was super disappointing again. I don't think he had a particularly fantastic game. He had a couple of key passes. He could have had 1 or 2 assists with Matoma. He set him up twice. But generally, he has been disappointing. And we'll discuss what we do with him moving forward. But at his price, I'm not expecting too much. Despite Wolves being really disappointing, and despite the fact that it might be last week in my team, a CUNHA 9-pointer was really nice. And in all honesty, since Game Week 7, CUNHA has just been so good for me. He's delivered the points when I really needed them, and another 9 points this week was fantastic. And a lot of people decided to sell CUNHA for Isak, and that actually paid off slightly, right? Because you gained 2 points. Luckily, I was able to have both of them. And honestly, the man that has just been saving me recently is Alexander Isak. He's just so good. And it's not just the returns. Please watch Newcastle. Isak is a man possessed at the moment. He created 2 big chances. He had a big chance himself. He is just an exceptional footballer, and the returns are coming along with it. He's going against Ipswich coming up now, and even the games against Villa United and Spurs, like, they're great, great games for him. So yeah, I'm so delighted I've got Isak, and unless he gets injured at some point, which I'm really hoping he doesn't, he'll be staying in my team for the foreseeable future. But it was a good game week, right? As I said, I'm on a small green arrow at the moment. It will probably turn to a small red arrow, I would imagine, on Monday evening, but that's not the end of the world. We're still moving in the right direction. I'm very happy with the team. So let's now take a look at the team moving forward and let me know how many points you scored in Game Week 16. So guys, I'm delighted to say that this video has been sponsored by Sorare. You might have heard me talk about Sorare before or seen me playing it on social media, but basically it's fantasy football which genuinely rewards you for your scouting, for your knowledge, and for your performance. It is 18 plus, so please play responsibly. There will be a link down below if you want to check it out. And what I thought I would show you in today's video is the most exciting part, which is actually picking your teams every week. So I won't show you necessarily all of it because it takes sometimes a fair amount of time to pick the players that you want. But basically, each week, I really focus on 2 competitions, which is the Premier League and the under-23s. So I'm going to show you for the upcoming weekend the sorts of players that I'm looking at and the combinations for those teams. So I've had to adjust the graphic a little bit so that you can see the team that I'm picking and the players that I have to choose from. But basically, I'm going to pick the first Premier League team with you and then show you the 3 teams that I enter after. So in terms of my best goalkeepers, it's probably, well, it's Onana, Leno, Henderson because Vicario's injured. Henderson's playing against Arsenal. Man United playing against Bournemouth, which isn't a particularly easy game. And then Fulham have Southampton at home. So I'm probably going to go for Leno. And what I tend to do in Sorare is stack. So if I'm backing a clean sheet, I really back it. So I'll probably go for Anthony Robinson as my defender. In terms of midfielders, Bruno and Declan Rice are probably my 2 best. But Bruno G of Newcastle plays against Ipswich. So I do wonder if that's the fixture to target here. So maybe I'll put him as my first choice here. I'm going to back Alexander Isak. You know I love him in FPL. He's obviously got Ipswich as well. And then in terms of the other player, you can probably put in another midfielder is the best bet. So I think I'm going to put in Bruno Fernandes here. And I'll probably captain Alexander Isak. So I think that will be my strongest team for this week. And it's about picking those combinations. Because it might be that Bruno Fernandes has a terrible game and Declan Rice has a great one. And if I'd have just put Declan Rice in, the team would have performed better. But that's the 5 we'll be going for. Let me now show you the 3 Premier League teams in their entirety. So guys, I built those other 2 teams very quickly. And as you can see here, they're not as strong as Team A. But Team B has the likes of Iwobi and Declan Rice, who I'm very happy to have picked up in the past. Mateta and Mainu in Team C. And all in all, I'm pretty confident I might have a decent weekend and earn some pretty good prizes as well. And like I said, if you do want to check out Sorare, there will be a link down below in the description. Get started on your journey. If you have any questions, let me know. As I said, it is 18 plus, so please play responsibly. Massive shout out to Sorare for sponsoring the video. And like I said, do make sure to check it out. So guys, looking ahead to Game Week 17, I'm currently in a 3-4-3 with 2 free transfers and 1.1 million in the bank. So I'm in a decent position in terms of flexibility of the team moving forward. But I do know that there are a couple of issues that I need to sort and potential fires to put out. And obviously the big one that I don't know at the time of me recording is whether CUNHA does receive a retrospective ban. So he basically elbowed someone in the back of the head. And then when the person turned around, he reached out and grabbed the glasses off their face. It wasn't like pulling them off in a jokey way. He sort of grabbed this guy's face quite aggressively. In all honesty, if I take my FPL hat off, that deserves a ban for me. I just don't think that's an acceptable way to behave on the field, especially the elbow to the back of the head. That's never acceptable. That's actually extremely dangerous. So I don't see a world in which he escapes a ban here. So I'm going to go off the basis that I might need to replace him, but we'll discuss that throughout. And obviously, if I don't need to replace CUNHA, I'm not going to sell him before Leicester away. So I'm sorry that I don't have an update as of right now, but I'm going to go off the basis that I might need to sell him. And even if I don't, it's still worth discussing the best forwards to own in FPL at the moment, because maybe you yourself are looking at making a forward transfer. And even if we don't sell CUNHA this week, we probably will in the coming weeks. So let's go through each of the players. Like I said, 2 free transfers to use. The goalkeeper situation's fine. Like, Sanchez isn't amazing. Raya is definitely outscoring him at the moment, but it's okay. Like, Chelsea's defensive data continues to look pretty solid. They do always seem to concede late on in games, which is very frustrating. But if I'm trying to take the emotion out of it and not knee-jerk and not be overly angry that Sanchez... They're a good defence. They've got good fixtures coming up. He actually makes a decent amount of saves, and he still appears to be number 1. And he's not overly expensive. Like, he's not taking up a massive amount of my budget. So, for that reason, he's perfectly fine for now. Everton away is actually a pretty good fixture. They've been really blunt in attack, as we've seen in recent games. So, yeah, I'm perfectly happy having Sanchez this week. I've got Fabianski on the bench if I need him. He's got Brighton at home. So, goalkeeper situation, absolutely fine. When we look at the defender situation, obviously 2 of them are great, right? Gabriel and Trent, they've not got the best fixtures this week, especially Trent. But with the premium defenders, firstly, because they play for Arsenal and Liverpool, clean sheets are always possible because they are 2 of the best teams in the league and they are the 2 best defences in the league. So they can dominate any game. Would I be massively surprised if Liverpool dominate the Spurs game and win 2-0? No. And can Arsenal stop Crystal Palace from scoring even though they're in a nice run of form? Absolutely. We've actually seen in the past that Arsenal are quite often slightly better defensively away from home because they just set up in a slightly more pragmatic way. So I'm really happy having Gabriel and Trent every week. And I know myself from past experiences, even this season, I've benched Gabriel on 3 occasions and he scored 6, 7 and 15. I did that at the start of the season because I was like, oh, he's playing against Man City this week. He's playing against Spurs. Just don't do it with your premium defenders. If you're paying 6 million plus for a premium defender, you start them every week. That's what I've found out the hard way. And so what we're essentially saying is I'm never going to really play a 4 at the back. So Gabriel and Trent start for me every single week. So if I'm always playing a 3 at the back and those 2 are starting every week, well, I only need 1 other good defender, or I need 2 defenders that I can rotate in and out based on fixtures. So that means I don't need 5 brilliant defenders every single week. So in terms of my other defenders outside of Gabriel and Trent, well, Vandenberg is one of them, but I don't need to sell him because he can just sit there on the bench as one of my cheap options. It makes no sense, really, unless you feel like you want to rotate 3 defenders for that final spot, to sell Vandenberg as of right now. So I plan on just keeping him. He has a game against Southampton coming up. I think it's around Gameweek 21. Maybe he comes in for that one game. Unlikely, but yeah, he just sits there for now. If I decide I want to play my bench boost at some point, or if I feel like I really need the squad depth, then I might sell him. But as of right now, there's no plan to, which leaves Aït-Nouri and Rico Lewis. On Rico Lewis, again, City haven't been good this season. Like, they were pretty poor against Manchester United. They're conceding goals. Rico Lewis, even when he plays, he's very advanced, but that doesn't transpire into points or actual opportunities to create and score goals particularly. But the underlying data is okay. I do expect at some point Man City to find a way to improve. And with the fixtures that they've got over the next 5 to 6 games, I'm pretty happy holding him for now. I don't necessarily plan on holding Rico Lewis for the full 5 or 6 weeks. I'm not committing to having him for all of those games. But equally, if other issues keep cropping up, there is a chance that I do keep him for a few more. I'm also looking at someone like Munoz, who obviously has picked up his own suspension going into Gameweek 17. But from Gameweek 19 onwards, Munoz has got great fixtures. He's around the same price as Rico Lewis. That feels like a transfer that I think a lot of people will make. So with Rico Lewis, it's not that I desperately want to keep him. I don't really want to start him this week, for example. But I'm also okay with holding him for now. And I guess the major reason for that is I've got a suspended Aït-Nouri. So like I said, Aït-Nouri is going to miss Gameweek 17. Beyond that, the fixtures are awful. This was the last game that we really wanted him for. And even then, I really don't mind that he got the suspension. I kind of just want to get rid of him. He's been so disappointing. He got a couple of returns for me. There was a 9-pointer. There was a 6-pointer at one point. But outside of that, CUNHA has delivered big time from a Wolves perspective in FPL. But Aït-Nouri has not been the one. So Aït-Nouri needs to go. And I'll discuss the possible defenders that I might look to bring in for him in the next section, because I've got 1.1 million in the bank, so there is some level of flexibility. On the midfield, there are lots of exciting midfielders I'd like to own in FPL at the moment, and one of them is Ahmad, who is playing in a more advanced role at the moment. He's playing as a number 10, and I said that if he switches from wing back to that number 10 role, it's potentially even makes him a worse asset, not because he won't get the returns, but because of the minutes. Because I said if he switches from right wing back to like a number 10 role, well, then he's got Mount, he's got Xerxes, he's got Rashford, he's got Garnacho to sort of compete with. Mount went off injured, and then Garnacho and Rashford weren't even in the squad. And they're not injured, by the way. They just weren't chosen. And Xerxes not been particularly impressive in terms of on-the-ball work. So Ahmad looks pretty nailed on, playing in a more advanced role now in the number 10, and he was exceptional against Man City. So I do have my eye on Ahmad as a Man United fan. I do want him in my team. And there are some other midfielders that I wouldn't mind having, but generally I'm pretty happy, right? Salah, Palmer, Saka, every week I feel pretty happy having, and then a rotation between Enzo and Rodgers. For now, there is no need to make a midfield transfer. Like when I have issues in the attack and especially in the defence, I just feel like I can roll with this midfield. The only thing to think about this week is obviously captaincy, but I'm pretty sure it'll be on Salah personally. And then do I start Enzo or Rodgers? And you might think we should start Enzo. He's got an easier fixture. I'm not sure it is. Like if you look at defensive data, Man City are a weaker defence than Everton. Everton have kept the same amount of clean sheets as Arsenal, Man United this season. They are top of the league with 6. Like Everton just aren't a bad defence at the moment under Dyche. So, and it's Everton away. I'm not sure I see many goals in this game for Chelsea. Whereas that Aston Villa City game, that feels like that could be sort of a 2-2-3-3 game. So there is some discussion to be had around whether I start Rodgers ahead of Enzo. I would love your opinion on that. And then that moves us on to the front three. Obviously, Isak will be staying unless he picks up an injury midweek. And he does play midweek, by the way. So bring him in. I was going to say at your own peril. That's not what I meant. Bring him in knowing the risks, of course, that he could play 90 minutes midweek or he could pick up an injury. Hopefully not. But Isak will be there as long as he's fit. And João Pedro, as disappointing as he has been, I'm not necessarily sure I love many or any of the other cheap forwards enough to justify using a valuable free transfer selling João Pedro. His minutes continue to be good. He's on penalties. He's playing for what are usually a very good attacking outfit in Brighton. And he's playing against 2 weak defences in West Ham and Brentford across the next 2. By all accounts, João Pedro is a fine hold for at least the next couple of weeks. And then if he's still not doing it and not getting the returns, and I've got a free transfer, then I'll look to move him on after that. Which then leaves us with Matheus Cunha. And I hate recording videos where I'm like, if, but, maybe. Obviously, if Cunha doesn't pick up a retrospective ban, which I think would be the wrong decision from a footballing FA perspective, like, I don't think that's correct. But if he doesn't pick up a ban, then I don't need to use a forward transfer. I don't need to use a midfield transfer. And really, I will just focus on sorting out that defence. But I'm going to go off the basis that he will. And if he does pick up a ban, then of course I've got two options. I just start Rodgers in a 3-5-2, and then I don't have that discussion to be had around Enzo versus Rodgers, and I deal with Cunha moving forward. Or I just sell Cunha this week, right? I've got 2 free transfers, and I sell Aït-Nouri, and I sell Cunha. I lose my 2 Wolves assets, and I am pretty happy about that moving forward. And then, yeah, I think the team will be in a really nice setup with the rest of the players that I've got available. So that's the plan at the moment, is to probably bin off the 2 Wolves assets. So with 1.1 million in the bank and 2 free transfers, let's look at the potential players that I might consider bringing in. So guys, moving on to my possible transfer plans for Game Week 17. As I said, 2 free transfers, 1.1 million in the bank, and the plan is to sell both Aït-Nouri and then possibly Cunha if he does pick up that ban. So on Aït-Nouri, I've got a possible few directions I can go here with the defence. I think the most obvious transfer is Anthony Robinson, and that isn't just off the back of his double assist in Game Week 16. It's just because of the fixtures and the fact that Fulham are still top 6 for expected goals conceded this season. So you've got a great defence, a player that plays pretty much every available minute for Fulham with some creativity and exceptionally strong fixtures, right? In the next 5, he's got Southampton at home, Bournemouth at home, Ipswich at home, and he's got West Ham away in there. Obviously not a great fixture in Game Week 18, but for those of you that have Rico Lewis, I'm almost certain it's, Everton at home in Game Week 18. So as long as Rico plays that game, you can rotate Rico and Robinson, or you just play Robinson, right? It might not be the end of the world anyway. We've seen that Fulham are a very, very solid defence that can sometimes keep out those very good attacks. So that just feels like a very straightforward transfer. Regardless of what I want to do in the attack, just do Aït-Nouri to Robinson. If we are also thinking about what I can do with my forward line, if I do Aït-Nouri to Robinson, that leaves me 7.8 million to bring in a forward. So it would rule out the likes of Jackson if I wanted to free up a spot to go for him. And it would also rule out someone like Kai Havertz as well. But I'm probably not going to go for either of those anyway. So yeah, that does feel like the very straightforward one. The other option that I have is to actually bring in a Bournemouth defender. So I've got Howson on here, but I also really like Kerkez. The only reason I've got Howson is I'm just thinking, if I were to bring in an asset over 4.5, I prefer Robinson to Kerkez. So if it's a straight shootout, I prefer Robinson. I think the only reason I would go for a Bournemouth defender, therefore, is if I do want to save the money, in which case Howson at 4.3, assuming he doesn't go up by the time you're seeing this, then he's a really decent shout. The reason that I do like that is it gives me a little bit more money either in the bank, or if I want to go for Havertz, because I haven't got a third Arsenal asset at the moment, I could do that. Or if I do want to bring in Nicholas Jackson, I would have to make a third transfer to then sell Sanchez, but it would give me the funds once again quite comfortably to then bring in Jackson as the forward. So I wonder if saving the 0.4 million could be worth it going for Howson rather than Robinson. But then again, it gives me a bit more of an issue this week. I either have to play Howson against Manchester United, or Rico Lewis against Villa, or Van den Berg against Nottingham Forest. So that doesn't feel as great. And I think overall, I probably do slightly prefer the fixtures for Fulham. So let's just type in Robinson here. So Robinson, like I said, really good home fixtures. After the West Ham game, you obviously just didn't see it on your screen there, but then it's Leicester. And actually, this run all here, I'm pretty happy having Robinson. He rotates relatively well with my existing defenders, so I like that. And I really don't have an issue with the Bournemouth fixtures, but I just don't think they're quite as strong. And then they've got this really tricky run here, I think, 21 to 24. I don't really love that. But then after that, it is pretty decent. I just think if I'm looking at fixtures overall, I slightly prefer Fulham's. And I also just prefer Robinson as an asset. The thing that I love about Robinson is how nailed he is as well. And I don't know that people are giving this part enough credit. If you look at previous seasons, he started 35 times in 22-23 and 37 times in 23-24. That's over 3,000 minutes in back-to-back seasons, which is quite difficult for a marauding left-back to do. Centre-backs often do it, but for a left-back to do it, it's pretty impressive. So I really like Robinson. I just think he's got a lot of what I would want from an asset. And I like getting into that Fulham defence. I could, of course, go for Anderson if he's fit and available at that point, who I believe is 4.2 million. He is. So that's another option. If I do want to stay with Fulham, but I want to free up some funds, I could go for Anderson. So Fulham and Bournemouth very much in my thinking. The other option I've got is if I want to go for a cheap forward to replace Cunha, or I'm just not making a forward transfer at all, I have 1.1 million. So my selling price for 8 Nuri, I know that's not his current price, but my selling price is 4.6 million, and Timber is currently 5.7. So again, assuming he doesn't go up, and I've not even checked price changes, but as of me doing that, I should probably check in a second, I can afford 8 Nuri to Timber. So it's the 1.1 in the bank. But obviously, if I downgrade Cunha to someone like Chris Wood, Raul, as we'll discuss in a second, then it will definitely free up enough funds for me to be able to do 8 Nuri to Timber. Now, I don't really know how to feel about this one, because obviously you would expect an Arsenal defender to outscore someone like Robinson, but I've got to think about different things here. Like, money in the bank is very important. We've got the new assistant managership. We've got future moves we want to make, and there is currently 1 million between Robinson and Timber. Am I that confident that Timber outscores Robinson by enough to justify the extra million? I'm less sure. So as you can tell right now, my most likely move in defence is 8 Nuri to Robinson. It's just such a nice entry point as well. It's always nice when you bring in an asset and they've got an insane fixture in the week that you bring them in. So that's the situation with the defence as things stand. With the forward line, like I said, and I'll keep repeating myself, I will definitely only do this if Cunha gets that retrospective ban. But the 6 players that I'm currently considering right now are Wood, Eva Nilsson, Raul Jimenez, Mateta, Havertz, and Wissa. I don't like any of these. I wouldn't even say that I really just don't like any of the 6 options here. And this is where it comes back to, do I then just make 3 transfers and get Jackson in? And that's something to think about. But then again, like, there are issues with Jackson for me. It's like, he's very expensive. It requires a -4. I then have triple Chelsea attack, which I'm not sure quite how I feel about going into the Everton game. By the way, he is still on 4 yellow cards. And I know we've been saying this for like 7 weeks now, and he's not picked up the 5th. But that's still the case. He's not on penalties. Like, I think Jackson's great. And I think if you told me I have all of the money, I've got a free Chelsea spot there, I probably would. But I don't even think he's that much of a standout that I'm like, yeah, I desperately want to bring him in. I just don't like any of them. Like, Isak and João Pedro, for me, are still probably the 2 assets I would most want to own in that forward line. So, I mean, let's go through a couple of them. Chris Wood is probably the most obvious option to bring in. I've just got a bit of a mental block against Chris Wood. You guys will know that I'm just not a massive Chris Wood fan. Like, I don't enjoy watching him play. I always feel like he gets very lucky with returns. Obviously, it's not true. Chris Wood has exceptional movement. He's really good at scoring goals and being in the right place at the right time. He's got pretty good expected minutes. He's on penalties. And at the end of the day, he's scored 10 goals this season. So I need to give him more credit. The reason that I think he's probably the standout is he's nailed on number 9 for Nottingham Forest, who have been performing very well this season. I like the fixtures against Brentford, Spurs and Wolves. I don't like the Everton game. And then it's Southampton. I quite like the fixtures overall, even though they don't look perfect on paper. He's on penalties. And he just returns. He gets goals. Like, when we're looking at this cheap price, like, what more do you want from the man? So he's probably the standout. In terms of someone that I've just got a bit of a gut feeling about, it is Mateta. But the fixtures and the entry point is just not there. Like, Arsenal and Bournemouth in the next 2, and even Chelsea in 20 then. Like, 3 of the next 4 just aren't particularly ideal. And he got subbed off in the 59th minute. Before that, he got 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90. And I was like, wow, Mateta looks very nailed on. I think it was game state. Like, the win felt like it was relatively in the bag for Palace. Him and Eze both came off in the 59th. So maybe it's nothing to be concerned with. But I just don't know. Like, the 59th minute sub, the 2 tough fixtures coming up, and the fact that he's not had many returns this season, only 5 attacking returns in 16 games, I'm just less convinced than I probably was going into the start of the game week that Mateta's the one. Who outside of that? I mean, Kai Havertz feels like he could be a really good shout for me, just because I don't have a third Arsenal at the moment, and a lot of people have double defence, but he's not really been particularly good from an FPL perspective. And his underlying data, it's not awful, but does it justify 7.9? And as I said, I'm going to struggle to get Kai Havertz in if I go for Robinson, right? I'd have to go for Anderson or Howson if I want Havertz. So that probably rules him out as an asset. Wissa, I think, has got great underlying data. Obviously, didn't do much against Chelsea, but the data this season has been exceptionally strong. But again, look at that run of fixtures, man. Do I really want to bring in Wissa for that crazy run of fixtures? I'm not so sure. Who have I missed out? There was one more player on that list there. Sorry, this section's a little bit messy. It's basically like a live stream. Okay, Raul Jimenez and Eva Nilsson. Those were the other 2. So on Eva Nilsson, I'll see how he gets on Monday. I actually really like this guy. I think he's got really good underlying data. The minutes have been pretty secure here. You can see a run of starts. He started every game this season bar one. His underlying data per 90 is actually very good. He's not on penalties, or at least he's not first choice penalty taker. And the fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag, but I quite like this run here, right? It's got 4 okay fixtures, although Fulham and Everton are actually quite good, as are Chelsea, Newcastle, Forest, Liverpool. He's arguably playing against 6 of the top 10 defences there in the league. And even Palace themselves have improved recently. So it's not the best run of fixtures, I would say, for Evanilson would be my only concern. If we're looking at fixtures, well, as I spoke about with... Oh, he's Raul, isn't he, on the game? As I spoke about with Robinson, it's Raul Jimenez. Now, I sold Raul Jimenez around... When was it? It was probably around Gameweek 11 or 12, I think I sold Raul Jimenez. The fixtures are there for the taking, right? Southampton, Bournemouth, Ipswich, West Ham, Leicester. Especially Ipswich, West Ham, Leicester and Southampton. They're 4 of the worst 5 defences in the league. Like, it's exactly what you would want for an attacker. My concern with Raul Jimenez is the minutes. So he's got 72, 74, 70, 77, 10, got the benching, and then 78, and then 67. And also in the last 3 games, Raul Jimenez has 0 XG, 0.04 and 0. He's not really getting a lot of goal scoring opportunities. His minutes aren't perfect. And if there is a game that you want to give Muniz a start in again, it's Southampton at home, right? You're not going to want to start Muniz if you're Marco Silva against Chelsea or Bournemouth. These are games where you want the experience of Raul Jimenez. So if he is going to give a game to Muniz in the Premier League, that is, of course, then it's going to be the Southampton game. So that would be my only slight worry, I suppose, that he might not start. But I think he probably will start. It's just he's going to get subbed off around 70 to 75 minutes, which isn't ideal. So basically what I'm saying is they all stink, right? The forwards just aren't it for me at the moment. So what do I do? Well, I hope that CUNHA doesn't get the ban, but if he does, I'm going to have to sell him. I think as of right now, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think it's Chris Wood. After I've absolutely slandered him all season. And maybe he just is better than I'm giving him credit for. And maybe you'll just say, and you know, feel free to type out in the comments, Chris Wood is the obvious pick, Ross. Maybe it's about time I got Wood. And it's great for the Wood-related jokes as well. So if I chuck it back to my team then, this is the way that the team is currently lining up. The one transfer which feels like 90% locked in is Aït-Nouri to Robinson. Although I do have a Bournemouth defender and Timber on my mind. And then it's just about if I do want to bin off CUNHA for another forward. I will just show you actually very briefly, it's this one I'm after. If I want to bring in Jackson, what I have to do. And a lot of you will say, this is why you shouldn't have bought Enzo, but I'm still glad I did buy Enzo, because I still think he's the best asset around that price. So if I go Aït-Nouri to... Do you know what? It could be Anderson. It could be Anderson, but it will be Anderson or Howson, one of the cheap defenders. Then CUNHA to Jackson. As you can see, I then have 4.8 to replace Sanchez. So it's a -4 hit. I can bring in any keeper then at 4.8. It's annoying because I think the keeper that I would want if you were to ask me in 3 weeks or 2 weeks is Henderson ahead of Southampton. But bringing in Henderson ahead of Arsenal and Bournemouth isn't great. I could play Fabianski, who's got Brighton and Southampton. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, we might be onto something here. So that's a possibility, right? I could just play Fabianski instead then. Or I just go for another goalkeeper like Sells, right? Forest continues to look pretty good. We spoke about the fixtures aren't bad, actually, for Nottingham Forest. So that is a possibility. If I really, really don't like any of the other forwards, I think Jackson is the standout. I can still get a Fulham defender in Anderson. I can still get then a decent goalkeeper to replace Sanchez, but then I am on a triple Chelsea attack, especially against Everton. I don't love that. And Jackson still has the issues that I said associated with him. He does get an odd early sub. He's not on penalties. He is on 4 yellows. But, I mean, 1.22 XG against Brentford. The man does accumulate a crazy number of chances. And I was probably fortunate that he didn't get more against Brentford. So I've got some options. I would love to know based on my team. That was a long ramble in that section. But let me know what you would do with my team. Do you think it is time that I go and get Jackson? Is it worth removing Sanchez to do it? It would be for a -4. So do take into account the hit. Or do you just think, just keep it simple, Robinson and Wood, and then leave it there? Let me know what your plans are and let me know what you think of my team as well. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 17 transfer plans. Let me know what you think of my team down below, and also let me know what your plans are for Game Week 17 as well. And if you did enjoy this video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. I do really appreciate the support. Until next time, which will be FPL Therapy on Tuesday and my Game Week preview on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.